Where am I? I'm
Okay.
back.
All right.
Yes.
So we're recording now. So tonight we have Nathalie Carden. And I guess the obvious first question I have is why the two last names? You have two last names, right?
Do you mean Rahanni Carden?
Well, in let's see, don't you have? Oh, you only have one last name. I could have sworn you had two.
It's because in my email address I have my French name. It's because I'm French.
I was wondering about that accent. So
Yeah.
anyway,
There you are. I live in
are
the
you
UK, but I'm
French or
French.
British? Which is it? Are you half and half?
Oh yeah, half and half.
I'm French Canadian, Dutch, English, Irish, and Blackfoot American Indian. So I'm a mutt. So do you consider yourself French or British? Where were you born?
I'm definitely French because I was born in France, raised in France until I left after university. So, but I've lived in England longer than I have in France now.
Okay, so uh, tonight we have Nathalie Carden, and she is a light worker or a light speaker, I should say. Uh, are you Reiki? No, you're not Reiki, are you? Okay, so
I do Rahanni.
that's is that Hawaiian? What is Rahanni?
Rahanni was a method of healing which was given to somebody in England. So she was given this method. She channeled it.
Ah,
And she now has a license to, this lady has a license to teach other people to become practitioners.
all right. So
And
that
it's basically a modality of healing which is fifth dimensional.
okay, we'll get into that shortly. So Nathalie Carden, please give the audience a very short or very long, or however you like to make it, introduction of yourself.
Okay. Well, I'm after all an energy healer. I don't work with just one modality. I work with sound. I work with my hands. I work in the quantum. I use shamanic rituals. I do many things. Okay. So I don't contain myself into one thing. I will use all the tools that I have in one session, unless the client requires something specific.
So you look at yourself as a healer.
I'm definitely a healer, yes.
What were you before you were a healer?
I'm a teacher.
Of?
French.
Okay. And
So,
have you ever taught anything besides French?
well, that's a good question. At the moment, I'm actually a supply teacher, which is probably a substitute in your country, which means I go to secondary schools where I could be teaching anything from science to technology to sewing to English literature to anything really.
So if I stuck you on an island and said you can only teach one thing for the rest of your life, and it could not be healing, anything besides healing, what would you teach if it wasn't
Wisdom.
healing?
Wisdom.
Wisdom. And where have you gotten your wisdom?
From my inner quest. So my wisdom is coming from inside of me. What I like to teach on the spiritual level is what I've experienced myself. Okay. I'd rather experience it first and then go and check if, hang on, there may be something out there that may relate to what I'm experiencing rather than the other way around.
So I noticed when I asked you to introduce yourself, you gave everything about your healing practice, but you never said anything about yourself. And before we get into your practice, obviously we will focus on that considerably during this conversation. But what I'd really like to focus on first is you. And since you just said you have had a lot of wisdom that you've learned through your experiences, why don't I was thinking, people always say in these interviews, go back to the first thing that happened to you. Well, if it's it's an interview about aliens, they'd say go back to the first alien thing that happened to you. If it was about the paranormal, they would say go back to the first paranormal event. What I'm going to tell you to do, or ask you to do, is go back to the first wisdom event, since you like to teach wisdom and in addition to healing. We can start from like a 50,000 foot perspective, but not that way, because we want to get detailed. Your specific experience, which taught you some wisdom, the first event you can think of that gave you some wisdom that you would enjoy teaching people, what event was that? Do you remember that event, if anything?
It's a very difficult question. I can remember the experience.
Sure, that's fine.
And the experience happened in dream state.
Go ahead.
I was asleep and I experienced love, but love on a level that is you couldn't possibly experience in your waking hours.
Well, take us through the experience from the beginning to the end.
I was in that at that point in my life. I was in a place where I was quite in a dark hole. Right, it was a bit rock bottom. Didn't really see the purpose of being alive at that point.
I've been there.
So apart from being here for my children, didn't really see what was the point of me living. And it was at that point that I had a dream. And the dream was just like an ordinary dream until, the only way I can explain this is, until I dreamt I met this person. And as we met, it's really difficult. I felt such love that I did not want to wake up. But the person was just symbolic, if you see what I mean. It wasn't about one particular person. It was basically, I felt my heart expand and open. And it's from that experience that I started realizing that there's more to us than we can see, because I come from a Catholic background. Okay. So I have been to church, I have been to mass, I've had religious teachings, and I had some sort of faith into something bigger than us. But at that point, I have to say my faith was very small. But after this experience, something within me started being triggered, I suppose, into, hang on a minute, maybe there's something worth living for. And then this happened to me again. This happened to me twice. The same balm. I just remember all this warmth and this feeling of unconditional love. And I also remember I did not want to wake up, I have to say. And I woke up with tears streaming down my face.
So in these two events, the being that you met, describe the being.
Pardon?
The two events you're talking about, you said you met a being that gave you love. Describe the being.
I couldn't tell you what being it was. It was just a human being, just a person, not particularly anything unusual.
So were you like in the dream? Were you walking down the street? What were you? Put it in the context.
I do remember I was on a boat. I was on a huge boat, like a cruise liner.
This is the first one or the second one?
The first one. The second one, I have no recollection.
I'll go to the second one. Go back to the first one. let's get through the first one completely.
So the first one, I just remember being absolutely...
You're on a boat.
Yeah, on the boat, but feeling extremely lonely until I met this person, it was actually the captain of this boat.
Okay. Look like a normal person.
Yeah, just an ordinary man. Nothing special, nothing, until he just stood in front of me, and wow, it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing.
Was there a visual component to this love? How did you receive the love?
I could not give you a visual component. I just remember having like a flash of light. That's the only visual I could describe. It was more of a feeling.
And the second one?
The second one was the same experience, except that I don't remember the circumstances of the dream. I don't remember what was in it. I just remember the feeling, which was the same.
Okay. So, you've had, if I had to make you guess, how many extraordinary events you've had occur in your life outside the healing process with your clients? Aside from that, what number would you give me?
How many? I can't even recall. I've had so many different things happen to me. It's unreal. I've had, for example...
All right, well, hold on, stop. Before you tell me, what I want you to do is I want you to go back to the very first one you can think of that you consider extraordinary. And I want you to go through as many of those as you can recall clearly. So go.
Right. Okay. I don't know if I can. The first one was my grandmother gave me a pair of earrings before she passed away. That's the only thing I had of hers. And these earrings, I was very careful not to lose them. So I wouldn't wear them. I put them away. I knew exactly where they were. And one day I went to look at them. And I thought, where are my earrings? And it vanished. So I literally went through the whole house. I had the whole house upside down looking for these earrings. And that went on for about 6 months. Each room, I was every little cranny, everywhere. I couldn't understand it because I knew I hadn't moved them. A year later, something told me to look in my bedside cabinet. So I did. And there they were. They'd reappeared out of nowhere.
Right. I've had that sort of thing happen quite a bit. Something disappeared, you know exactly where you put it, it disappears, and then a day, a week, a year, 6 years.
That was a year.
Yeah, whatever, however much time it is later, all of a sudden it's there. I went and did the ayahuasca in Peru, and about 6 or 8 miles outside of Iquitos. And in the jungle at night, it's pitch dark. You can't see your hand. If there's no moon, you can't see your hand an inch in front of your face. It's pitch dark, right? And without a flashlight, you're not going anywhere. So at the end of this last experience, I was trying to find my flashlight. I knew I had it in my pocket. It was a headlamp, right? I knew it was in my pocket. I reach in, both pockets, they're empty, right? I go around all night long. My pockets are empty. I'm searching for this flashlight the whole night. Even the next day, I was searching for it. Eventually, I reached into my pocket. It's in my pocket. Now, how do you miss something that's very obvious in your pocket that when it's your life? You know, it wasn't there all night long, and all of a sudden it's there.
Well, I think you were never meant to have it because you were meant to be in the darkness. There was obviously something in that for you.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, oh yeah. You were supposed to be experiencing the darkness.
Oh, I did. Believe me, I
Yeah.
did.
Well, that must have been a bit terrifying, I have to say.
It was.
I don't think I would have liked to be in that situation
Well,
at all.
it's in my, it's going to be in my movie when I finish writing the script. I tend to write a script soon. I've jotted 8 or 10 pages down just to get started. So hopefully that will come to pass. We'll see. You never know if you're going to live to the next moment, though. I mean, your heartbeat. I could die before this conversation finishes, or I could be alive 30 years from now. You never know, right? You never know. Right. So go ahead, give us some more.
There's another very significant thing that happened to me, which would be classified as paranormal. I lost my cat. That was, oh God, about 10 years ago. Or more than that. No, must be 14 years ago. She was very ill, and I had to take her to the vets to be put down, which absolutely traumatized me because I'd never had to do anything like that before. Anyway, it was a sunny day. 3 days later, it was a sunny day. I'm reversing my car into my driveway. I look in the mirror because obviously it's quite tight to make sure I'm not hitting the wall. And as I look in the mirror, I see my cat, who I had put down 3 days earlier. Like I see you now, walking, her coat really vibrant, and that lasted like 3 seconds maybe.
Where was she walking? Behind the car, or where?
She was on top of the wall, so that the wall was just above the car, and I could see in my mirror the wall. I wasn't looking specifically to see her because I was reversing my car, but I did see her.
Well,
and I thought that was pretty amazing as well.
Yeah, there's a show I got about 75 recordings of this show on my TV. I haven't watched them. I'm just waiting I watch them whenever I have nothing else to watch, right? And there's absolutely nothing I can find to watch. I'll flip one of these on and watch it. It's called Paranormal Caught on Camera. And they have people take pictures, and they in the picture you see a clear image of an animal. It's not a 3D or even a 2D image. It's just like smoke, but it's in the shape of the animal, that sort of thing.
This was definitely full color, 3D, like I'm seeing you now. It's as if I was looking at her on a screen.
Well, you hear about people like they're walking down the street, right? And so you don't know if these stories are real or not, but there was one story I heard where a guy was walking down some backwater street out in the middle of nowhere, and this car pulls up, a taxi or some kind of car, fancy car pulls up. He gets in the car and rides along, and then gets out of the car, looks away from the car, and looks back, and the car is no longer there. And you're like, there's no car. It wasn't a real car. It was just a ghost car. He rode in the thing, and you're like, huh?
Yes, he rode in it. So it was a bit like a quantum leap, I suppose.
I don't know. Well, I was interviewing a lady, and she was telling me about her mom when she was young. She lived in this like 6 or 8 or 10-story high rise, and she would like go outside and then go do whatever she wanted to do, and her mom would always be looking for her. In her mind, her mom would be like washing dishes, but in her mom's mind, she's like thinking about the kid, right? Like, where's she at? What is she doing? What is she getting into? She's being the mom, mentally, while she's washing the dishes. So she said one time she went out and went, hiding, and then came back, and she was like standing in a position where she could see the opening to the apartment, and she saw her mom walk out of the apartment and then take a left and go, down to the inn and go down the stairs and all this, looking for her, right? And then immediately she walks into the apartment, and her mom's still there washing dishes.
That to me, I really do feel we do jump timelines a lot.
Well,
and it's
she would,
more and more.
according to paranormal research, she would be bilocating. The mother would be mentally, some part of her astral body or whatever would walk out of the apartment and go walking, looking for her daughter, while the other part is still washing dishes. She's like splitting her or whatever.
Well, that something like that did happen to me. I was in meditation in a group, and the person leading the meditation, it was a meditation about that we were told to visualize a plate of fruit and to pick a fruit from the plate. Okay. In this guided meditation, in this group that I was sitting with. And I heard the lady say, and now pick a banana. So I visualized picking a banana. When the meditation finished, we all started talking about what we experienced. And I said, oh, yes, and when you told us to take a banana, and she looked at me and she said, I never told you to do that. I said, yes, you did. I heard you. I was the only one out of the whole group that heard her say, take a banana. It's because she obviously, like you said, she was sitting in the same room, but I think her astral body spoke to me while she was sitting there. That's the only thing the only way I can explain it.
So, you got any other extraordinary experiences you want?
I don't really. I can't think.
Can't think of any.
I can't think of anything. There's lots, but
okay,
I can't think of anything right now.
We'll move on. So you mentioned in your LinkedIn connection, there's like 8 or 10 things listed there. First one is mentioned is meditation. So you have a style of meditation that you do or did do or used to do? Or?
I like to guide people into themed meditation, where I base the meditation either on the energies at the time, whenever the meditation occurs. So if it's a full moon, it's about releasing negative energy and bringing in more positive things. I've run meditation on Atlantis, remembering gifts from Atlantis, but at the same time healing traumas of people, because many of us light workers have had previous lives in Atlantis.
So I'll go and stop for a second. All right. So how the obvious question is, how many past lives do you recall? Can you recall at this moment of yours?
Of mine?
Yeah. How many?
God. Well, 2 that I'm practically I'm sure of because I've seen it.
Okay.
But other past lives I've been told about, which is different.
No, I'm only interested in the ones that you
the
know
one that
yourself.
I've seen. I even went and checked a few things. So I was in meditation. I didn't know I was going to tap into a past life, but that's what happened. It was actually the past life that I was tuning into was myself as a young lady with the sort of dress you'd be wearing the early 1900s, maybe a bit before that.
Go ahead.
Maybe even late 19th century.
Do you have a context, a country?
Oh, yes, city? Yeah. The context was I was in a grocery shop buying something. I recall being very much in love with the young man who was serving me at the counter. I was wearing a beautiful green satin dress with a choker and a little owl on the choker. And when I came out of this little shop, there was a car and a horse and carriage waiting for me outside. And inside the carriage was my father.
In that life?
In that life. And he's very authoritative and very strict. The next thing I know, I'm in the house we lived in, which was like an estate house. And I then it was really strange because it was moving. It's like I was seeing the most important parts of that life.
Right.
Even though that was not the point of the meditation. I had no intention of doing that. But afterwards, I actually started researching because I was given a name. So I started researching on the internet. Can I find anything about this family?
Right.
The only thing I found was that they did exist and they did live where I was given, the sort of region I was given in England. This is all in England. And I did drive to the place that was given to me in meditation, and it was the exact same place I'd seen in my meditation, and I'd never been there before.
Okay. Do you know your name and your family name?
Family name was Harrington.
Do you know your whole full name from that life?
No, I don't know my whole full name. I just knew it was Harrington.
And what were you in that life? Housewife?
Just the daughter of a very well-to-do gentleman. And I know my mother had died, and it seemed that I was just living there on my own with him.
Okay. So do you know how you died in that life?
No, I didn't see that. But I did see another lifetime where I was a herbalist. I was a young lady. It didn't start like this. The actual meditation started with, I was a young girl. I was about 12. I was wearing clothes that looked like, these potato sacks, that sort of material.
Yeah.
So wearing clothes that were made in that sort of, is it called, and I know in French it's called jute. I don't know what it's called in English. Anyway, so I was standing by a river and felt very, very alone. And then it sort of jumped to the next part where I'm standing in a cottage, in a kitchen, and I'm standing over the table with a big wooden bowl and a mortar pestle. And behind me, I could see all these jars with herbs in them. That's how I figured out I must have been a herbalist.
Right.
And that next bit did make me jump, I have to say.
What were you, a man or a woman or what?
Pardon?
In that life, what were you, a man, a woman, or what?
I was a young lady, about 25, blonde, and I was an orphan.
Country?
England, again.
So you only had a tiny stint in France. The rest of all your incarnations are all in England.
No, they're not. I know about some that have happened in France and some that happened in Mexico, and one that happened in
tell us some
Egypt.
More. Tell us more.
I don't know much about these. I just know.
Those are the ones that other people told you.
Well, I'll tell you what. When I went to Mexico on holiday,
right,
we went on one of those guided tours where they take you to a tourist's place. You look at the cenotes and da-da-da-da-da. And there was a shaman, a Mayan shaman there. Because part of the tour was to have a Mayan ritual. When all the tourists went for their little swim, I asked the guide if he could ask the shaman something or other. I can't remember what the question was exactly, but I wanted to know something. The shaman did not even look at me, and he said to the guide in Spanish, I know this lady from another lifetime. So that wasn't me as such finding out for myself. It was the shaman that told the guide that he knew me.
So was there anything about this shaman or shaman that made you believe that what he said was true, other than the fact that he said it?
Not about the shaman in particular, but about a reading that I had 2 years previous to going to Mexico, where I was told I was involved in, I don't know how to say this really, scribing some symbols regarding the Mayan calendar.
One that said everything is going to end in 2012, that one?
Well, I don't believe that anyway, because
But I
it
mean,
was
the calendar, their calendar.
yeah, the calendar, yeah, which was misinterpreted, I have to say.
Well, I'm not saying, I'm not giving any credence to any interpretation of those calendars. I'm just saying, I'm saying it like people would normally
Yeah,
know.
that one, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, sound. How do you use sound in your healing practice?
How do I use sound?
Specifically, how do you use it?
Specifically, well, right, okay. I use light language.
Is that the only way you use sound, or is any other?
No, it's not. No, I use tuning forks. I use crystal bowls.
So hold on.
I use
Wait,
shamanic
don't. We're going to take these one at a time. Let's go back to the tuning forks.
Okay.
What have you done with the tuning fork in your healing? How do you use it?
How do I use
How
it?
do you use it? Give me an example of how you've used a tuning fork at least once or 2 or 3 times or more in your healing.
Yeah.
What did you do with the tuning fork?
What do I do?
What did you do?
I cleanse the chakras. So I first of all establish whether the chakras are blocked.
And how do you do that?
Or I use a pendulum for that.
Okay, so you just choose a yes or a no with the pendulum swinging.
But I also use my intuition.
Okay.
It's not just, I'm not totally reliant on a pendulum. So I will tune into the client.
Stop. You use which do you rely on more, your intuition or the pendulum?
I'd rather use my intuition at all times, but it's nice to have a tool as well, just to make sure.
Okay, so take us through how you used your pendulum and your intuition to get to the point of you determining whether the chakra is open or closed, or
well, whether they're opened or closed, whether they are spinning in the right direction or the other way. And then I'll use my tuning forks to clear and cleanse each chakra. And I also use my tuning forks on different organs in the body when I established whether.
Hold on, before you keep that thought in mind. Let's back it up just a second. You're doing I want you to take us through the usage of the tuning fork as if we were in the middle of an actual session you were having with somebody. You've determined that the chakra is spinning the wrong way or closed or in some way not correct. Now you got the tuning fork. You strike it. First of all, how many tuning forks do you have?
I have the solfeggio and I have the the 5 to 8, which are another set.
Give me a number. Give me a number. What's the total number of tuning forks?
I've got
approximately.
About 15 tuning forks.
15. Okay. Yeah. So how do you just grab one because that's the one your hand goes to?
I don't just grab one. I make sure I'm using the right. I always start with the because it's very gentle and that's the frequency that brings you back to the universal sound.
So you use the tuning fork
to start with, and that's what I use to cleanse.
So how does anybody get an Om tuning fork?
Well, you can either just buy it or you buy it as part of the course when you qualified as a therapist, which is what I
I
did.
understand that, but I mean, you understand my real question, and that is, how does anybody, the guy who sold you the tuning fork, how does he know it's an Om tuning fork?
Because there's a lot of research being done about sound therapy.
But you get what I'm
So
saying.
it resonates at a certain frequency.
What
Whatever,
is the frequency of Om?
I can't remember at this point. It's something I'd have to look again because I don't think of it as a frequency. I think of it as the Om. The other forks, I think of them as frequencies, but not that one.
Okay. All right. So
It has got a specific frequency.
that's fine. So when you use the tuning fork on the chakra, what types of things do you do to the chakra with the tuning fork? In other words, you move it, you
So I
you
move
strike
my
it and
fork,
then you move
I
it, right?
strike it, I move it over the chakra. So I go anti-clockwise to remove anything that's not serving that person. And that could be many different things on an emotional level.
Right.
And spiritual level, whatever is going on for them. And then I put whatever I take out, I put back in positive energy within that chakra.
So it's like a hypnosis session. You're erasing or trying to get rid of in some fashion that which is negative programming, and you're trying to program back in positive programming, just like hypnosis.
Yeah. So anything that is imbalanced, I bring some balance back to it. So I bring back the frequencies that the actual chakras would be resonating at to start with the fork.
And how do you go about choosing which tuning fork is the right tuning fork?
Well, I will have a consultation with whoever I'm doing the healing for.
Right.
So depending on what's going on for them, then I will be deciding which fork to use.
So you use different forks for different situations.
Unless it's the first session, in that case, I'll be using only the and the 528 hertz, which is the for miracles and unconditional love. So that brings back that sort of soothing, I suppose, to the emotional body, physical body, spiritual body.
So the Om and the 528 are the basic, universally usable tuning forks, but the others you use for specific situations.
Yeah.
And I don't want to give away all your secrets, but you deal with the Akashic Records.
Again, I haven't actually done a course as such, but as I said, sometimes when I'm working with people, I'm all of a sudden made aware of, well, actually, what's going on now is related to a past life where this happened or that happened. And this is why you're feeling this way, because it's related.
So are you telling me that you're picking up psychically what happened in their past life? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. And how does the Akashic Records fit in there? I mean, just to me, okay, so if I said I psychically pick up somebody's past life, I would just say I psychically picked up their past life. I wouldn't throw the Akashic Records into this mix because
There's
go ahead.
also, well, I do, because I have sometimes, as part of my work, consulted the Akashic Record masters. So
How?
I actually
How? Stop.
purposely.
How?
How?
How do
I
you
can't
do
tell
that?
you how. I can't tell you everything.
I mean, okay, so what I'm saying is, do you just do they just are connected to you and they just give you the information? Do you have to go into
You actually
You have to
call
actually
on,
travel over to the Akashic Records and go through
yeah,
them, read
yeah.
through the books, or how do you get the information?
Well, I put myself in a sort of meditation state, so a theta kind of state, and that's how I travel through to where I need to go to find out the information I need.
So you go to the actual Akashic Records themselves and look at the Akashic Record.
Mm-hmm.
So describe two things. Describe the process you go through to get into the proper state to be able to access the Akashic Records first, and also second, describe what it's like to be in the Hall of Records. That's two things.
Well, what is right for me may not be right for everybody.
That's fine.
So somebody else may have a totally different vision
That's fine.
of what Akashic Records look like.
Oh, yeah, I understand.
For me,
Before you get to that, you're jumping past the first question. I want to know how you get
well,
into the state of mind to be able to reach the Akashic Records. I mean, we all have. Okay, so how do I put this?
Well, I asked for permission to start with.
That's for who? For permission?
The Akashic Record Masters.
Ah.
Yes.
Well, who are they?
Who are they? Well, I don't know. They're the ones who look after the records.
Yeah, but
and actually,
have you met one?
When you look further into it, there's an aspect of us which has got, which looks after our own records.
Have you met an Akashic Record Master?
Yes.
And what does he or she look like?
They can look like different things at different points.
So it can look like anything. The master can look like anything.
But it's something that you have to it's something that could be different from different people.
I understand that, but I'm saying, how did they appear to you? I'm not saying they're always going to look like X. I'm just
not
saying,
what you would expect for me. Yeah. It's not what I expected.
Say again?
Whoever I have met when I have done this sort of work, it's not the sort of thing, maybe sort of person you would expect to see.
No, I don't. Okay, so I'm not trying to say this is what they look like and they always look like this. That's not what I'm trying to do. All I'm trying to do is give the audience some idea of how you experience them at least once, if not more than once. How did they appear to you?
The only one that I've ever properly encountered, because there's been other times when I visited the records, but I didn't actually see the record master.
Right.
That one time, it was a little old man who was a bit grumpy, and that's it.
So, when you saw the little old man that was grumpy, was there any context in which he existed when you saw him? He was in obviously a Hall of Records, but how did the Hall of Records, in that one particular time, when you went to the Hall of Records and you saw the grumpy man, what did the Hall of Records look like to you at that moment?
It looked like to me like a gigantic library.
What kind of library, though? There are many, many, many different types of libraries.
It was a big room with lots and lots of books, and I just knew where to go to find what I needed.
So in this big room with lots and lots of books, was it wood? Was it what was the room made out of? Was it just books in the middle of the air? Were they sitting on shelves?
No, it's on shelf. It was on shelves. From what I experienced in my vision, obviously, because as I said, it could be different for everybody. It was like a carpeted room with shelves, a desk, a chair.
It's like a regular library.
Nothing fancy.
Just like a regular library.
Yeah, just like a regular library.
Were the shelves
very high walls?
Were the shelves? You said high. So when you say high, what do you mean? 5, 6 stories or?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So it stretched vertically a good ways.
Yeah, it stretched upwards.
Okay. And how did you, when you went to look at the book, in the book that you looked in for the record of the person you're trying to help, do you remember reaching for the book, opening the book, or just reading the book? What part of that do you remember?
I reached for the book. I didn't particularly open it because I was doing a specific kind of work where I was looking at contracts.
Right.
Okay, so I knew I set my intention before going there.
Sure.
So as I got there, what I'm getting is precisely what I'm asking for. So
And
I've no need to open it right up. I just need to know that everything I need to retrieve is there.
so when you read the record of the person you needed to help and you looked in the book, did the pages look like regular written pages, or were they, how did they appear in your mind's eye when you saw them? Do you remember?
um, I'm just laughing because I'm thinking of my own records. When I looked at my own records,
That's fine.
they didn't look anything like that at all. In fact, it wasn't like a library at all. It was
Go ahead.
the inside of a cliff, and everything was written in golden letters on the side of this wall.
In big letters.
Yeah, and it wasn't human writing either.
What kind of writing?
It's symbols.
Okay, so um, let's jump to light language. How did you learn your light language?
I didn't learn it. It came to me.
So,
And it didn't start as speaking, it started as singing. So the first thing that happened to me was sound came out of my mouth as if I was going to sing. But when I started to sing, I was in the bath at the time, and I thought, oh, this is strange. I'm feeling something, like something's coming up in my throat, like some energetic, whatever was going on here, felt like something was going to come out of my mouth. So I thought, oh, maybe I need to say, I have to say, I always meditate when I'm in the bath. So I was already in a sort of semi trance.
okay.
So I just let it happen. And when this song came out of me, it was something I'd never heard before. Couldn't pinpoint what it was. All I knew was it was absolutely beautiful. And it
So,
felt
hold on.
amazing.
Let's stop for a second. Okay, so keep that thought. Is there a singer or a song or anything you've heard aside from what came out of your mouth that night? There would be any type of approximation to what you came out of your mouth that anybody's ever recorded or anything you could think of? No? Too bad you didn't have a recorder. Recording.
No, I didn't. And that went on for about 2 years. I would have these songs or this. Sometimes it would be toning, and then from that I started to speak a language which I didn't understand. I didn't know what light language was at the time. I had no idea, never heard of it, which was all very strange to me. And that's only when I started speaking this, because I am a language teacher, so I thought, this is odd. I've never heard this language, don't know what it is.
So,
So I started looking into it.
so what moment in your life did you actually realize what it was? Tell us about that moment.
It was very, very odd actually. I had a group of friends round in my house. We'd just been doing a group healing, and we'd finished the healing, and we were all sitting down. And I went to address one of my friends, and instead of speaking English, I spoke in this light language. And that's when it all started. And we all looked at each other as if, what's going on here? Because none of us knew what was happening.
Right.
And from there, I started speaking one dialect, and then another dialect, and then another, and then another.
How many light language dialects do you know?
I stopped counting.
I
have stopped
somebody
counting.
said, you have to give me a number. What would you guess? 10, 20, 50, 100?
Anywhere between 10 and 20.
10 and 20. Okay. So you can speak it. Can you write it?
Yes.
All of them?
No, not all of them.
How many can you write?
2 or 3. Writing is that's not what I do. I'm more about the sound.
Okay, so have you considered writing a book?
I've considered it, and then I thought, nah, it's too much hard work. So I'm not going to.
Well, okay, so if nothing else, you could write a book on light languages. It wouldn't have to be a big book. It could be a small book, small number of pages, sold for a small amount of money, but it might help the world out if they knew, all those dialects. If you can write them all down, at least the ones that you can write down, and that could be like part of the book. And the other part of the book is how, like the introduction will be what the story you just told me, right? Introduce yourself, and then introduce that's the first introduction. Then the second introduction is how you learn how the light language process from the singing to, as far as you want to go through that. And then the actual dialects, as many of those as you want to lay out. And then, you have to also translate each of those. So I'm sure you could do it easily. It sounds to me like it wouldn't be much work at all.
With light language, you can't always translate.
Go ahead.
You can't. It's not like a human language where you can translate literally from one language to the next. It's not like that. You get concepts.
If you can, let me put it this way. If it has any meaning and it can be understood on any level, even if it's fifth dimensional, then it can be written down in the vaguest of terms on the third.
Oh yeah, in the vaguest of terms, and
that's fine. It doesn't. That's the point. Is that you don't have to. How do I put this? You don't have to give everybody every piece of it, but if they have a vaguest idea of each piece, then they can. Maybe it'll spark.
Yeah, I agree. But sometimes there's the concept of whatever is being said is not even understandable from the human brain. We wouldn't be familiar.
Let's go back to
whatever is going on.
Let's go back to the understanding of what dimension it comes from. You made the statement, light language is a fifth dimensional construct. So on the fourth dimension, they don't have light. If we can do light language on the third dimension,
I don't remember saying it's a fifth dimensional construct.
You didn't say that?
No, I didn't say that.
Okay, well maybe that's just.
No, I would not have said that.
You said something about fifth dimension or something. Maybe I just.
Yes, the Rahanni healing is a fifth dimensional.
There we go.
That's what I was saying.
There we go. So let's go to that for a moment. We'll come back to the light language. Go to the Rahanni healing. Tell us about that.
Well, it was channeled by this lady in England, and it's basically a modality of healing that works very much with the heart. So everything's based on forgiveness, a lot of it. Okay. I have to say it's not something I use a lot of. In fact, I probably haven't used Rahanni for 2 or 3 years now, because I work very much with sound. I don't
And why does
practice Rahanni as much as I used to.
give us a slightly more detailed understanding of Rahanni, and after that, tell us why you moved from Rahanni to sound.
Well, with the Rahanni, it's very much you apply your hands on the client in different places over chakras, arms, head, legs, in different positions. You call on certain deities, very much calling on Kuan Yin, the goddess of mercy and forgiveness and compassion.
Right.
Yeah, and it's very much hands-on. This, I can't explain why I've moved from that. I just felt like it wasn't fluid. I felt restricted by just using that, and I felt like I needed to be more organic in my healing. So if I needed to make a sound while I was doing a healing on somebody, I would. So I don't use Rahanni as such. I've sort of made up my own modality now,
And
which can involve crystals as well.
so you use tuning forks. What are the other sound instruments you use besides tuning forks?
I use a shamanic drum.
And what does that do that's different from, say, the tuning?
What does that do? That's a very good question. I use it a lot for journeying.
For yourself or for the client?
For the client.
I mean, are you journeying for the client or the client?
Yeah, our journey for the client.
Okay, so you're doing a shamanic journey for the client. So where do you go?
Depending on what they need, upper world or lower world, but usually lower world.
Okay, so tell us, when I asked you a while ago about extraordinary experiences, I truly was asking about outside the healing process, but I suspect that you've had quite a few very extraordinary experiences within the healing process. And if you haven't had to go to the lower worlds, please tell us about them.
I don't know, because
that was a laugh.
I can't really. I've had some
any experience you've ever had. Any experience you've ever had. Any experience you've ever had in the lower world. Can you recall it? Any of them? Do you forget them all, or can you recall?
No, I don't forget them all, but I just feel it's personal, and I just don't really want to talk about it.
That's fine. You could just say that. That's fine. If you don't want to talk about it, that's fine. There's nothing we have to talk about it. If you don't want to talk about it, that's fine. Okay, but you have been in the lower worlds many times?
Well, not that many times, no.
How many times would you say, relatively speaking?
I don't know, but not hundreds of times. That's all I can tell you.
Hundreds, really?
No, not hundreds. No,
not hundreds. Less than 100. Okay, so there's no experience in the lower world ever that you would be willing to talk about. Not even one.
No.
All right, that's fine. All right, so are there any other instruments that you use or modalities you use that you wish to speak about?
Yes, I use what they call shadow work in some of my sessions, where I'll take clients into the heart center. So I am basically guiding them. They're sort of meditative state, but they're still able to interact with me. So I guide them into the heart center to meet their shadows. Okay. And from there, we do some work to bring them forward, to do some healing on that, and then to do some integration.
So shadow work, as in, can you give us a slightly more detailed understanding of what shadow work is, as opposed to, okay, so we know that they're in altered state. We know that we're working with them on a given issue. I don't really need anything from your clients. What I'm trying to do is bring that information forward so that people understand. Somebody wanted to do what you do, and they didn't have the money or time or ability to come and learn from you directly. But let's say you really like the person, so you're going to give them some idea of how to do what you just stated. What can you give a little more detail about exactly what you do with the shadow work?
Well, obviously, I can't tell you exactly what I do, otherwise I'd be revealing all my secrets.
Yeah.
But I do take whoever I'm working with in a space where they will feel
Comfortable.
totally safe,
Right.
totally held,
That's normal. Yeah.
totally seen,
Sure.
so that they are able to bring forward from their subconscious mind whatever it is we're working on at that time.
Sure.
So that is brought from the subconscious mind to the conscious mind, and
Right.
we work on it from there.
So, you know what an attaching spirit is, right?
Pardon?
An attaching spirit that attaches to people.
Yeah.
You know what that is, right?
Yes.
Okay. So have you ever worked on removing attaching spirits? Have you ever done that kind of work?
Are you talking about entities?
Yes.
Yes, it happened a couple of times. I've had to work on that.
Okay. So are you okay with talking about those events?
It's not something I really like to talk about. I have to say, I'm not. It happens, but when it happens, it's not something I go looking for. Exactly. It's
So
something that I've had to deal with.
Without revealing your secrets and without going into too much detail, can you give us some at least vague idea of how these attaching spirits were removed when you worked? Were they, first of all, did you succeed in removing them each time, the times that you're mentioning? Yes or no? That's one thing.
Yes.
Second thing is,
yes.
Okay, so you succeeded. So is there any detail you can give about how you removed them?
Right. You have to sort of engage in a sort of conversation with the entity. So there's always some sort of understanding, why is this happening? Why is this there?
Right.
Because there's different types of entity, and sometimes it could be just somebody who hasn't passed on properly and is sitting literally in somebody's auric field.
Well, okay, so
because they're scared of moving on.
right. I understand that. So what if it's not a human spirit? What if it's a darker spirit? How would you get them to go on? Something that is not human. Have you dealt with anything beyond humans?
I can't say I've dealt with animals as such, not in that way, not as in something that was bothering anybody. I have done soul rescues, but that's not what we're talking about here.
So tell me about a soul rescue.
Sometimes I just made aware of people who are stuck between where they should be and where we are, and I help them along their way to be going to the next level.
So these are people, these don't necessarily have to do with your clients. They're just things that you came across, right?
That's generally nothing to do with my clients, unless it's an issue that they have to deal with. Obviously, I can help. It's something that happens to me. They seem to come to me too.
Can you go over any of those experiences? Or what can I say?
Yes, I suppose I had somebody very close to me who was in a very bad way, very depressed, not very well. And they drank a whole bottle of alcohol.
And died?
No, fortunately, thank goodness. Drank a whole bottle of alcohol. And when I asked, why did you do that? The answer was, a voice in my head told me to do it.
Right.
And I thought, well, that figures, because it's very unlike this person to do something like that. And I thought, there's something really strange here. I need to investigate. So I tuned in and realized that actually this person had an attachment with them.
Sure.
It was an alcoholic who, through this person, he wanted this person who'd passed, who hadn't gone properly to where he should have gone, was using the person I know to drink, because
sure.
they can do that. They sort of, they don't inhabit your body as such. It's just they put the thought into your mind to do something.
Are you familiar with George Rishi's book, Return from Tomorrow?
No.
Okay, so
not at all.
He was, I haven't read his book, but I just know of it and what was in it. And he was taken on a journey like the Scrooge, like the fictitious Scrooge story, where a being of light or some type of being comes to him and takes him the past, the present, and the future, right? And in the present, or could have been the past or the future, either one, he's taken into a bar and he sees attaching spirits on the back top of the head of the people drinking, and he sees, somebody drinking so much that they fall down and pass out, and then when they pass out, disincarnate goes into the person while they're passed out, seeing all this stuff about how those humans who passed on want to continue getting drunk, so they attach to.
That's exactly what happened.
Right.
Exactly that.
Yes.
And I had this experience firsthand. But that person, that disembodied being, actually needed help, because sometimes people pass and they don't understand that they're not actually in the physical. There's that as well.
Right. So I guess, can you speak the light language on demand?
Yeah.
I'd like to hear some of it. I bet my audience would like to hear some of it too. You can't translate it, that's okay. But we'd like to hear it.
I won't be translating. I just need to put an intention. And the intention is going to be very simple. It is, I'm just going to give whatever is needed for whoever is going to be receiving this. So if it is for their highest good, that's what they're going to be getting.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Anamahaya ka'a muro shahan tako o tort ish nakata ar mbrok ak er ush intaka. Inahaya hetak uhuntor ust ek a intarurustikan daroek. niakoto itakeoe, shitaka antako urumbruk ek Nakati Arthur Ushtagarabarok ek ar umbrok ek Ishtagaratok or indaka ata to or umbrok ek Ushi harto umbror ia or umbro ist ar deka risha umbra ata. Blessings.
So, do you know in any vaguest of terms what you just said?
No.
Even the
I
slight?
have no idea. No. I have no idea.
So when you...
I've just because I don't know who's going to be listening to this. So it must be universal something.
Right. Of all the times you've spoken light languages, how many of those times would you say percentage-wise where you knew exactly what it, when you came back to your normal state, where you knew exactly what it was you said? Is percentage-wise?
I wouldn't say exactly because you never know.
Well,
exactly.
You know what I'm saying. Or
okay. So maybe 20%, 30%, around that. And it has happened sometimes that I speak light language and straight after, whatever's just been said is directly translated into English. But it's approximate. It's not going to be exact.
Right. Can you give us an example? You don't have to speak it. Give us an example of something you've said in a light language in the past, and not the language itself, but the translation.
No, I understand. I can't think of anything because as it comes, it goes. It's usually a message to whoever I'm speaking to. And because I speak light language on a daily basis, I speak light language all day long.
Right.
To myself. And every time you speak light language, you're bringing in more codes, light codes, activations. So
okay, so take us back from in a sort of a vague journey from the moment you first started, after you were singing, when you started actually speaking as opposed to singing light language, to this very moment where we're at now. What has changed about you? You say it activates things, it changes things within you because you're speaking it. How have you changed from the moment you started speaking it to this moment now? Give us just some vague ideas of how you've changed. It doesn't have to be specific, but if you...
No, yeah.
Well,
I just have a completely different understanding on why we're here.
Go ahead, tell us why we're here.
It's made me understand that I have a purpose.
Sure.
Why
are we here?
That the light language that I speak it because there is a purpose for me to be speaking it. I wouldn't be able to speak it otherwise. So
in the vaguest of terms, if this was your last moment on earth and you could just say one thing about our purpose here just before you pass, what would you say about why we're here in the vaguest of terms to all the audience? Why are we here? What is that?
We're here to grow, for our soul growth. Okay. We're here to experience what it is like to be a being of light in a human body.
So is our experiences, are they feeding, like all of my experiences from the moment I'm born to the moment I die, same with you and everybody else, are these experiences feeding the larger construct of who we are? Is it, in other words, the whole gets the experience, the whole absorbs all of the individual experiences of all the...
Each individual experience is part of a whole collective. And there's not just one aspect of us either. This is one aspect, but there are other aspects of us living in different dimensions, which you can connect to as you grow, as you advance spiritually on a spiritual path. The more light you embody, the more you are able to connect to these different aspects of yourself. Okay.
So is there any part of yourself that's beyond the part that I can see it on this camera
Oh yeah.
that you can speak of in any detail in this moment? Can you give the
Yeah.
audience some idea of your other parts of who you are? I'm going to stretch you. I want to know
Oh
the
my
other
God,
parts of
you're
you.
stretching me in big ways.
Can you give the
I'm
audience?
just aware of the energy. I can't describe totally who they are. I just know that they are there. I just feel these different aspects come in and go out, and it's not me going on a trance in a sort of trance state. It's not like that.
It's part of the
It's
larger
very
part of you. The
difficult to explain.
larger pieces of you come in and are there, but you know
Yeah.
that's you.
Yeah, I just do.
And okay, so let me ask the same question from a different angle. Okay, so you've done lots of shamanic journeys, gone to the lower worlds, and you don't want to talk about the lower worlds. That's fine. Can you talk about the other upper worlds that you've been in? Anything you can say about your journey, any journey you've ever had into an other world, like the afterlife or maybe a higher level. Is there any journey you remember any detail of that you can relate in the upper world? Since you don't want to talk about the lower worlds, I want to get you to talk about some world besides this world, because that's what our conversation is about. The larger construct. Any journey, just a snippet of a journey. Doesn't have to be long or detailed. Or is there any little piece of anything that you remember? Because see, I could tell you about one of mine, but it would just take up too much time because we're not here to interview me. But since I've got you in the spotlight, I get to ask you if you remember even one moment or 30 seconds of, or 15 seconds of, or just the tiniest snippet of any other realm besides this one.
Any other realm besides this
It can
one?
be the afterlife. It can be the higher realm. You don't want to talk about the lower realm, so you got to give us something about something.
I'm trying to decide here.
Something most memorable that if you got old and senile, you'll never forget that moment that you were where X or Y or Z, some place.
No, I've been to a place recently which I don't know which round I was in. I don't know exactly where I was. I just knew I had a glimpse, well, more than a glimpse, of an aspect of me which was absolutely beautiful. And it was a bit like paradise wherever I was.
You didn't want to come back.
Where it was. I just know it was like paradise, and it was full of joy, full of peace, full of everything that we would have ever wanted.
Can you give us any details about that place, other than the fact that it was awesome in every way?
It's very tropical.
Was it warm? Did you feel warmth, physical, like as in?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's very warm. And I just felt I was there for some kind of initiation. I don't know what exactly, because I don't recall all the details. That's why I have to write things down, because otherwise I don't remember. But just remember the general feeling of, yes, that feels really good. Wherever I am, I'd like to stay there a little bit longer.
Okay. Let's see. You say I work at a deep level when I perform soul retrieval and ancestral lineage healings. When I am a student of consciousness, and I don't know that I'm on your level. I'm not trying to compare myself to you, but I know how to relax my body to a profoundly relaxed state, to where, have you ever heard yourself snore?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know why you can do that?
No. That's a good question.
The reason why you can do that is because Snoring has nothing to do with sleeping. Snoring is a construct of, has absolutely nothing to do with sleeping. It's a construct of physical relaxation. When there's 2 or 3 stages of consciousness that are at a very basic level. The first one, as a hypnotist, is relaxing the body. Okay. When the body is fully asleep, profoundly relaxed, you will start snoring. Doesn't matter where the mind is. You could be as sharp as you are at this moment. You won't be, but you can be very sharp mentally, but your body is fully asleep. You will start snoring because snoring is a product of physical relaxation. Okay, that's how you're able to hear yourself snoring. I do it all the time, but I only hear the like babies, the very beginning of snoring, not true full-blown snoring. Just like where you start snoring, it's much lower level, but it's there. But my point is that I'm curious about when you say you're at a deep level. Okay, there are many states of mind, deep, which could be considered deep. Now, I'm going to give you one of them just so you can counter with where you're at. The one I'm thinking of is not like what we're taught. They teach you to go down from beta to alpha to theta to delta, and somewhere in there you're at a deep state. Well, there's other forms of meditation that do just the opposite. They go up above beta to gamma, 40 hertz. The no mind state is up there. It's above, it's not down below, right? I've never learned how to go to the gamma state. But when you say you're at a deep level, what level do you believe you're at? Can you describe it at all?
When I'm doing, no, it's very difficult because it's not something I analyze. It's something I do.
Sure.
So I never thought of it as in a scientific approach, as in which state of awareness I'm actually in right now. I just know that I'm conscious. This is where it's difficult for me to explain, because I'm conscious, but at the same time, I'm aware of a totally different, I don't like to call it reality, but something that is not in my consciousness, my awareness right at that moment where I am sitting in this kitchen for now.
So I
could be sitting here, not even in a meditative state. It doesn't have to be, and I could have an awareness of something. I suppose maybe you could call it imagination, but it's not imagination as such. It's very difficult to explain.
Well, okay, so have you ever, so there's you know who Robert Monroe is?
No.
Okay,
sorry.
So Robert Monroe, there was a technology that Robert Monroe discovered. He didn't invent it. Somebody else invented it. Unfortunately, I don't know off the top of my head the name of the guy who invented it. But Robert Monroe took that technology and he developed it to where it could be used. Okay. And it's called hemisync or hemispheric synchronization. Maybe you heard of that. You've heard of that, right? Okay. So you have a hemisphere on the right and you have a hemisphere on the left. They're 2 different brains and they speak to each other through the corpus callosum. They have different frequencies and they operate independently of each other, and they speak to each other and some people don't even have a corpus callosum. There are people, Rain Man, the guy that made the movie Rain Man, he didn't have a corpus callosum. So his 2 halves of his brain didn't talk to each other, but he could do things that are off the charts awesome, right? Okay, So Robert Monroe took that technology, and the technology works as you have one frequency in one ear, a different frequency in the other ear, and your brain entrains to the differential between these 2 frequencies. Let's say you have 100 hertz in this ear and 40 hertz in this ear. Your brain is going to entrain to 60 hertz. That's the differential between the 2. Both sides of your brain entrain together to that one frequency. So you get the higher mind states because your 2 brains are working together as one. When you do laying out of hands, same thing happens. When you sync to the Earth's 3, 8, 7, Schumann resonance. Same thing happens. Your brain starts syncing together. Okay, so one day I was listening to his first commercial product was called the Journey. I forgot what it's called. Something. I don't think I have it with me, but I forgot what he called his first product. But I was listening to one of those tapes, and my mind was syncing together, and I had my eyes closed, and all of a sudden I could see the room around me, but my eyes were closed, and I thought I thought my eyes were open because I could see clearly, even though my eyes were closed. I got up and I started to walk across the room, but my head was still hooked to had the headphones on. It was hooked to this thing that, a recorder, player, or whatever, it's sitting next to me. And I realized in that moment that my eyes are not open, but I could see the room as if they were open because I'm seeing through my mind's eye. That's what you're talking about. You're talking about seeing the world around you from your mind, not from your eyes.
It's not even the world. It's really difficult to explain because it's not necessarily the world as we see it here.
Right.
Is I could be seeing things that are related, like a past life, for example. I could be sitting here, but at the same time as I'm speaking to you, it's as if part of your brain is seeing something else that's over there that's not even in this dimension.
Sure, of course. But you're
And that's
seeing it.
exactly
You're seeing it with
where
your mind. You're not seeing it with your eyes.
Yeah, and it's not even a question of sometimes being in that different brainwave. It's just I don't know how to do it. I have no idea. I just do it.
Right.
I don't know how I see it.
So can you give us an example of when you did that once where, you don't have to give us anything about the client. I'm just curious about what you saw in general. Did you see and how that helped you? What was it that would happen?
I can give an example of what that is a personal example where I literally saw myself as an African man being rejected by a tribe, living totally alone, being extremely emaciated, wiry hair, toothless, and it's as if I was there.
You realize you're talking about experiencing one of your past lives, correct?
Yes, I was
Okay,
actually experiencing a
that's
past
another
life.
past life that you didn't mention.
Oh yeah, well, I forgot because I've got so many. It's like I've lost track now.
Well,
I
how many
remember
past
the hut.
lives?
I could see the hut. I could see everything.
How many past lives would you say you've had a connection to directly, relatively speaking?
I think of
Doesn't have to be accurate.
I don't know, 5, 6.
That's fine.
That I've seen for myself.
Sure. So, all right. So, when you say you accompanied your clients on their soul journey, is there a soul journey you did with one of your clients that stands out? If I say, give me a soul journey of one of your clients, is there one of those that was like, you'll get old and senile, forget everything you've talked about in this conversation, but you won't forget that journey? Is there one that really stands out that is unique, or in any way that just instantly it comes to your mind? Is there something like that you can relate?
Well, a soul journey is not. It's probably used the wrong terminology, because the journey of a soul we'll never know. We won't be able to pinpoint where are you at in your soul journey. I don't think personally, because you're constantly evolving. So when I talk about a soul journey, it's more of a journey that I take with the client,
A shamanic journey.
with whatever work we are doing at that time.
Right.
So it could be that I could be doing inner child work, for example, and the client will be put right back whenever any trauma has occurred at that point in their childhood.
Right.
And that's where we start doing the healing on
So
that.
you're talking about soul journeys
itself.
of your clients more than yourself. You're not shamanically journeying as your client is doing soul journeying, not you.
It depends what I'm doing. Sometimes I'm doing the journeying. But if I'm doing a shamanic type of journey, which is me doing it, if I'm doing shadow work or inner child work, that's different. The client goes and sees. And I see at the same time, most of the time, what they're seeing, because I'm tuning in at the same time and getting information, which helps them to, is what I like to do is empower people to do the work for themselves. Because I feel, to me, it's more important that they know what they're seeing, that they know what they're experiencing, and that they know that they are truly healing from that.
So they take the soul journey and they know by going through the journey that it is them that is being healed through themselves. So they convince them. You don't have to like give them a red blue pill. They know in the end that they were healed because they went through the experience.
No, basically that's where it's very different to certain healing modalities, where the client will just lay on a therapy couch and expect to receive healing, and that's it. They don't put anything into it apart from accepting to receive this healing. This is very different.
Yeah, I know.
Where the person will sit and take full responsibility and are willing to look at what's actually going on for them, but ever at a deep level.
So when you take people to the experiences that they need to go through to heal themselves, typically, how do you get them to that experience? What type of techniques do you use to get them to?
I usually use sound, but at the same time I use a guided meditation where we go deeper and deeper and deeper into what I call the heart center, which is your garden, and then I take them deeper into what I call the secret garden, which is another level to that. Okay. And by the time they've got to their secret garden, they are totally immersed in a different world, which is their inner world.
And well, I think we've gone over just about everything, unless you'd like to, if there's anything you'd like to say that you think people should hear about, like a website or a book or call 4949, whatever you want to tell the audience that you think that, this is your chance to sell yourself.
I don't have a website just yet. I only have a Google, my business page, and a couple of Facebook pages, Facebook pages.
Well, they can reach you through LinkedIn, but if they're not on LinkedIn, what's the best way to reach you?
You can go to Nathalie Carden, Shamanic Sound Healer on Facebook. Or you can go to Healing and Meditation Journeys on Facebook. And
you say those
energy healing.
Can you say all that again at about half speed?
Sorry. I'm not used to speaking in microphones. You can go to Nathalie Carden, Shamanic Sound Healer on Facebook.
Sun Healer.
Yeah.
Shamanic Sun Healer.
Yeah.
Okay.
or healing and meditation journeys. That's the second page.
Healing and meditation journeys?
Yeah.
Okay.
Healing and meditation journeys. And I've got a Google My Business page, which is energy healing. So when you search for sound healing in Kent, UK, Northern Kent, that's what I'll be there towards the top bit.
So how much, okay, so have you expanded beyond in person? I used to, in fact, I probably have only done healing through in-person stuff. I've never done it over Skype. So do you do healings over Skype or
Yes.
or Zoom or anything?
Zoom.
You do.
Mm.
Okay. So is there any difference between doing it over Zoom as opposed to doing it in person?
No, the results are exactly the same. I also do group sound healing on Zoom. And again, the effect, because it's frequency, it will reach you wherever you are in the quantum field. And in the quantum field.
What is that?
So basically, because we live in a quantum, it
Oh,
doesn't matter.
Oh,
yeah, where you
it's
are.
your accent.
What did you
I thought you were
understand?
saying Quentin.
I don't know.
Quantum in the quantum field. Okay.
Yeah, quantum. It's because I'm French.
All right. I thought you were saying Quentin as in the
No,
vampire
no.
or the what was it? The wolf, the wolf man, Quentin.
No.
But you remember Dark Shadows? Do you remember Dark Shadows? It was a TV show on that one when I was a kid. It was I think these were British actors, and one was a vampire, one was uh, a what do you call a wolf man?
Werewolf.
Werewolf. Yeah, one was a vampire, one was a werewolf, and there was a witch, and there was all the different scary things that people think about. They had one of each, right? And it gave me nightmares when I was a kid. So it's but I think they were all British actors. They might have been American, but I think they were British. But I could be wrong. I really don't know. You'd have to go Google it.
I don't know. I've never heard of it.
Anyway, is there anything else
Yeah,
you'd like
so
to
in person or Zoom, it can be done either way. And in fact, since we've had this COVID-19, I've done most of my work via Zoom.
So do you find any limitation with Zoom that you would not have, that you wouldn't have that limitation if you're in person?
Maybe if the quality of the sound is not great, or if the internet goes down or anything like that, for the client may not be, but this is a mental process, I have to say, because it happens whatever, even if the internet goes down and I'm still doing the healing. In fact, I have done healings on people where I have had no communication whilst doing the healing. I'm talking about sound healing here. I've had absolutely no, they're not on the screen. I'm doing the healing. I've asked them to go and lie down and start relaxing, deep breathing, etc. And it's still happening, even though I have not connected with them on Zoom. It's even happened once when somebody didn't even realize that she'd put her name down for a distance healing, and she was asleep. While she was asleep, saw all these amazing colors. When she woke up, she remembered thinking, oh, what was that about? This is strange. I was seeing a lot of yellow. I sent her a message afterwards to say, how was the distance healing for you? And she said, I didn't know you were doing a distance healing. I just forgot. And she said, I said, well, I was doing a distance healing and I was working on people's solar plexus. She said, well, that would explain why I saw a lot of yellow. So it makes absolutely no difference.
So where does somebody find out your rates?
They need to contact me. for
But
that.
you don't have them anywhere on the web anywhere.
Oh, no, no.
So you don't charge more than like $1 million an hour, do you?
More than what?
$1 million an hour.
No. Actually, maybe I should get charged $1 million an hour. No, nowhere near that.
All right. Well, so somebody's got to reach you to get your rate. They can't read it somewhere.
Because it depends what they need. And I haven't set up, well, I have obviously different prices for different things, but I do packages as well. So it just depends what people need, really.
Have you considered putting it up on the web somewhere so somebody can go, oh, she charges this amount and this girl over
I
here
have considered it, but I'm not there yet because I'm evolving all the time, and what I do is always evolving. So I'm setting myself up at the moment.
Oh, you've been doing this for 18 years and you're still getting started.
I've been doing this for 18 years. I've been working on myself for 18 years.
How long
I've
have you
been
been doing
doing
healing?
all this for the last 4 or 5 years.
So you've been healing other people for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Okay. And how long have you been making a living totally at doing healing, where healing was?
I'm not making a living totally at doing this yet. I'm still a supply teacher half the time, and whenever it happens.
What else do you do? What else do you do besides heal right now?
Sometimes I run guided meditations. As I said, I started a group sand healing on Zoom every now and then. I do private sessions when I'm contacted.
You realize all that is healing, right?
Yeah.
But you haven't mentioned it. You haven't mentioned anything besides healing.
No. So, but I do supply teaching as well.
You do what?
Supply teaching as a day job.
Supply. And
I'm a substitute in secondary schools.
Oh, that's right. And what? Okay. Which you could be going and teaching something different every day you go in. Is that what you're saying?
That's right.
But what grades do you tend to teach?
So secondary schools in the UK is from year 7 to year 12. Well, yeah, year 11. And
so junior high and high school.
High school.
So what's the most difficult subject you teach for you? The most difficult or most
for me
complicated?
It's probably physics. I find that very difficult.
You teach physics? Seriously?
I don't teach physics, but when there's a lesson with physics, I'm still expected to go through a PowerPoint with physics or chemistry, whatever I'm presented with.
Have you taken physics at the college level?
What do you call college?
College. Harvard, MIT, college. Have you taken physics at the college level?
No. In the education that I have, which is French, because I lived in France right up to the moment I took my degrees. It's very different. So we've got the baccalaureate.
The what?
Baccalaureate.
Wow, that's a mouthful. Go ahead.
Oui, baccalaureate. Where you have to take a certain number of subjects to get the whole diploma examination.
Right. And
so basically, when you're a substitute, you're specialized in one subject or maybe two, but you're expected to teach everything that you're timetabled for.
So, okay.
Whether you're a specialist or not.
If you have never taken physics at a college level, I've taken like basic electronics, and they're teaching what do you call it? Calculus. And calculus is like So I've never learned calculus. And I missed like the first 2 weeks of this class. I was so lost when I got in there. But the point is that I've never been able to even begin learning the absolutely most basic piece of calculus, nothing. In physics, obviously, calculus has to be somewhere at the very bottom basic level of physics. Calculus has to be in there somewhere. It's got to be math. And then, you go from there, build from there. But I can't really say what's in there because I've never taken it. But I would think that would be
I
part of what
understand that, and it's a challenge. I can tell you I've had many challenging situations where
Have
I've
you ever
literally
taken
walked
calculus?
into pardon?
Have you ever taken calculus?
No. What I'm saying is, I walk into a classroom, I'm given a PowerPoint, and I'm expected to go through this PowerPoint with the students. So if they could be in year 7, which is they're 11 years old at that point,
Right.
Or they're 12, or they're 13, or they're 14. So do make sure that they understand that that's not my specialism. My specialism is French.
You're just reading off the PowerPoint presentation.
No, because I do have some experience of some science, obviously, like when we're talking about if they had a lesson on a state of matter, for example. I can talk a little bit about state of matter. I'm not completely ignorant, but it's not my specialism.
Yeah. Okay. So let me test you real quick.
Oh, don't test me, please. I don't like being tested.
What are the 4 states of matter?
Well, to me, first of all, it's very basic because I'm only aware of 3, unless you're talking about something else. But solid, liquid, and gas.
Okay, so the 4th state of matter is the one that everybody forgets. It's as simple as the first 3. It's just one that people forget. Okay, you're in a professional building. You look up the lighting in the room. What kind of lighting in a professional building do you generally have? What kind of lighting?
Neon.
Right. So what form inside that tube? You have neon gas, and it's charged with an electric charge. So what form is it in inside that tube? Plasma. That's the 4th state. Okay, so
yes.
the sun that's right as I'm pointing, if you see my hand, I'm pointing out there. The sun itself is not a gas, it's a plasma. It's a charged gas. Okay, that's the 4th state of matter, charged gas or plasma. So that is when somebody says, what are the 4 states of matter? Always remember solid, liquid, gas, and plasma. Okay, but there's actually a lot more than that, but those are the ones that are generally understood by science to be for sure. Those that, like water. Let's take water, for instance. That's a liquid, right? But if you go researching Googling the states of water, water itself can be in many different states. It can be the state, not just states as in ice, liquid, and slush. I'm not talking about those states.
Steam,
Forget about all that. I'm just talking about in the liquid state. There are a number of different states of water in a liquid state. There's different types of liquid. Water can be like you can stick a pole in the middle of a pond of water. The liquid that's directly touching that pole is in a different state than the liquid that's not touching the pole. A totally different state. And
really?
Yeah. And there's all these different things that people don't know because they haven't researched it. They haven't read up on it. It's there. It's all out in the open. But liquid, just in a liquid state, there's different versions of matter within the liquid state. And they're not generally accepted by science because the scientists just don't go that deep into what is liquid, but like, for instance, okay, I'll give you another. If you go to a star, like a not a black hole, but like a what are the stars? You got I'm trying to think. There's red giants. There's orange dwarves. There's black holes. There's white holes, and there's a star. I can't think of what it is, but it's collapsed to where it's not yet a black hole, but it's super dense.
Supernova? What? I don't
No,
know.
no, supernovas when they explode.
When they explode. Right, okay. I'm not an expert on that.
I'm talking about when a star, there's a type of star, a dwarf star. Okay.
Right.
A dwarf star is so dense that it's the particles in it are in a different state of matter. They're not like electron, proton, neutron, that sort of thing. They're too dense to have that. They're in a totally different state of matter that hasn't been, it's never been given a name that I'm aware of. But that's my point, is that's another one that people don't recognize yet, because it's not generally understood that within a dwarf star you have matter that's so dense that it's in a different state than normal matter, right? But you know that, do you understand that that the universe, when you hear people like Michio Kaku say, you've been taught that matter is electrons, neutrons, protons, and so forth and so on. That's what you've been taught, right? He said, no, that's totally wrong. It's all incorrect. Well, he's not saying that that's false. What he's saying is that applies to a percentage of matter. But beyond that percentage, the rest of the universe, the majority of the universe, isn't like that at all. It's not electrons, protons, and neutrons. That's literally 4% or 5% of the universe is made up of electrons, protons, neutrons, and so forth. That's 5%. That means that 95% of this realm has nothing to do with electrons, protons, and neutrons. It's totally different. That's called it's called dark energy, right? That's the big construct. That's like 60% or 70% dark energy. And then you got like 30% or 35% that's dark matter. And then you got this 5% down here that's the regular stuff, electrons, protons, and neutrons. People don't think about that everything they've been taught is wrong. It's only the tiniest piece of this universe on this realm. I'm not talking about the higher dimensions.
Oh my God, yeah.
This is just the physical realm. It's not like anybody thinks it is. It's totally different. But we're not taught that in school. School is so far behind the truth.
I know.
They're like way behind. Anyway, is there anything?
We're behind that. It's yeah, I agree.
Is there anything you'd like to say to your audience before we end this conversation? Something you'd like to say for them, or about yourself, or about anything. This is your chance to say anything.
For them, what I'd like to say is really look within yourself, because that's where you will find your truth.
Thank you, Nathalie Carden, for being with us. I'm going to stop this recording now.